Spaceballs wasn't just another sci-fi parody. It was Mel Brooks at his wackiest and smartest. Released in 1987, the film poked fun at Star Wars and took aim at almost every sci-fi cliché. It made people laugh, but it also slipped in hidden jokes, clever references, and moments that most fans completely missed. And behind the camera, total chaos, wild rewrites, last-minute changes, and cast secrets you've never heard before. From box office surprises to jokes that flew right over your head, this movie was way ahead of its time. Join us as we take a closer look at the movie, the cast, and the genius behind-the-scenes secrets. The movie that made fun of everything. In 1987, a new kind of space adventure landed in theaters, but it wasn't the kind with serious battles or dramatic lightsaber fights. Spaceballs was a full-blown parody. It was loud, it was silly, and it didn't hold back. This movie made fun of almost everything people loved about science fiction, and it came from the mind of one man, Mel Brooks. He directed it, produced it, co-wrote it, and even acted in it. Twice. That's right. He played two major roles. One was President Scroob, the not-so-bright leader of the bad guys. The other was Yogurt, a wise but funny teacher who guides the heroes. The film's main goal was to parody Star Wars, but it didn't stop there. It also made jokes about Star Trek, Alien, The Wizard of Oz, 2001, A Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes, and even Transformers. That's a lot of ground to cover in one movie, but Spaceballs pulled it off, turning all those serious worlds into one big comedy. At the center of the story is a hero named Lone Star, played by Bill Pullman. He's a space mercenary with a cool ship and a big heart. His best friend is Barf, a half-man, half-dog creature played by John Candy. The two of them set off to rescue Princess Vespa, played by Daphne Zuniga. She's been kidnapped by the evil Spaceballs, who are after something very strange: her planet's clean air. Vespa's robot sidekick, Dot Matrix, is a golden droid voiced by Joan Rivers and performed by Lorene Yarnell. Dot keeps Vespa in line, even when things get weird. The villain of the film is Dark Helmet, played by Rick Moranis. He wears a huge, silly helmet and takes himself way too seriously. Alongside him is Colonel Sandurs, played by George Weiner, who follows orders even when they make no sense. The leader of the Spaceballs is President Scroob, who somehow runs the whole show despite being completely clueless. The story kicks off when Vespa runs away from her wedding and gets kidnapped. Lone Star and Barf take on the mission to save her, hoping to get a reward. But after a crash landing on a desert moon, they meet Yogurt, a small wise figure who teaches Lone Star about the Schwartz, a clear spoof of the Force from Star Wars. Yogurt becomes their guide, helping them prepare to defeat the Spaceballs. Meanwhile, Dark Helmet and Colonel Sandurs keep messing up their evil plans. They try to track down Lone Star and the gang, but are constantly slowed down by their own mistakes. This mix of adventure and comedy keeps the film moving, even when the jokes are as ridiculous as they come. From spaceship battles to breaking the fourth wall, Spaceballs wasn't afraid to do things no sci-fi movie had done before. The film came out on June 24, 1987, through MGM. At the time, the reviews weren't all great. Critics were mixed. Some loved the humor, while others didn't quite get it. But fans? They remembered it. Over the years, more and more people started talking about how clever it was. Even if the jokes seemed silly, the movie had a smart way of copying well-known sci-fi moments and flipping them on their heads. That's why Spaceballs slowly built a huge fan base. People kept watching it, quoting it, and laughing at things they missed the first time. And while it started as just a parody, it became something much bigger, a cult classic, the cast that made it all work. One of the reasons Spaceballs worked so well was the cast. Mel Brooks didn't just hire actors. He hired comedians who could deliver the kind of silly but sharp humor the movie needed. Bill Pullman wasn't a big star yet, but his take on Lone Star gave the movie a strong and likable lead. He brought charm and confidence without trying to be too serious, which was perfect for the role. John Candy, already known for his comedy, was the perfect fit for Barf. His timing, energy, and costume helped turn the part into one of the movie's most memorable characters. Then there was Rick Moranis, who completely transformed into Dark Helmet. His serious delivery of ridiculous lines made the character unforgettable. Daphne Zuniga added a sharp contrast as Princess Vespa. Her dry humor played well against the chaos around her. Her robot companion, Dot Matrix, gave audiences even more laughs. The character was physically played by Lorene Yarnell and voiced by Joan Rivers, who gave Dot her distinct attitude and personality. Mel Brooks himself added more than just direction. His roles as President Scroob and Yogurt gave the film two very different kinds of laughs. As Scroob, he played a greedy and silly leader. As Yogurt, he gave wisdom. Well, sort of. His version of a wise mentor was full of one-liners and jokes, but it worked. The supporting cast also played their parts well. George Weiner, as Colonel Sanders, balanced being a loyal follower and a clueless officer. Dick Van Patten added a royal touch as Vespa's father, and Rudy DeLuca and Dom DeLuise made short but fun appearances. Together, this cast helped turn a strange idea into a movie that still gets watched and quoted today. And while the cast brought the laughs to life, the script behind it went through its own wild journey. What started as a huge story had to be trimmed down fast, from a massive script to a 90-minute cult hit. Mel Brooks revealed that the original script for Spaceballs was much longer than what we saw on screen. It started at a huge 247 pages. That would have made the movie over 2 hours long, but they ended up cutting it down to about 96 minutes. According to Brooks, they hit pay dirt around 140 pages, which means they found the gold in the middle and trimmed the rest. He called the movie a period picture, saying it reminded him of an old fairy tale world from the 14th century, but mixed with space and the future. That blend of time periods gave the movie its strange and funny style. One funny moment fans might have missed is Dark Helmet drinking from a styrofoam cup. Brooks said the crew would always leave their cups around the set, so instead of fighting it, he made it part of the world. Even small things like that added to the humor. Co-writer Ronnie Graham even acted in the film. He played the priest who was supposed to marry Princess Vespa. Brooks said he usually didn't eat lunch with the actors, joking, "They are animals, as you know." But this cast was different. He made an exception because they were so lovely to work with. He hired Michael Winslow, the sound effects guy from Police Academy, because he did all the effects with his own mouth. Brooks laughed and said, "I saved over $100. While he praised everyone, he gave special love to Rick Moranis. Brooks said Moranis really cared about the film and always gave his best. He also had kind words for the late John Candy, saying that Candy's character Barf still brings him joy. But some jokes made him blush. He admitted he was both proud and a little ashamed of the Druish princess joke. It was silly, but that's what Spaceballs was all about. Filming, makeup, and the cost of laughs. The desert scenes in the movie were shot in Yuma, Arizona. Brooks didn't hold back. He said, "The accommodations weren't great, so not the easiest shoot. But those scenes turned out to be some of the most memorable." One part Brooks is really proud of is when Dark Helmet and his team put in a VHS tape of Spaceballs to find out where the heroes are. He said, "This concept was one of the truly inventive concepts. I'm really very proud of this." That moment became one of the film's funniest and most creative scenes. When it came time to cast Princess Vespa, Brooks didn't hesitate. He had already seen Daphne Zuniga in The Sure Thing and immediately wanted her. He thought she was perfect for the part. Sometimes Brooks would go off topic during the commentary. One time, he started talking about how MGM used to be a great studio before it changed hands. He even brought up their cafeteria, saying they always had matzo in honor of Louis B. Mayer. "The matzo would get in your teeth," he said, "but it was worth it." He also talked about how some of the special effects were done. For example, in the scene where Dark Helmet is riding a land speeder, they used a mirror under the vehicle to reflect the sand and make it look like it was floating. That simple trick gave the shot a cool illusion. Brooks had a rough time with his yogurt costume. The makeup gave him a terrible rash on his face and neck. His knees also hurt from moving around in that costume. Still, he said, "I love the character, so it was worth it." He also mentioned that the movie cost $25 million to make, calling it his highest budgeted film. even though another movie, Dracula, Dead and Loving It, is listed online as costing more. Brooks claimed it was actually cheaper. He said he only ended up playing Yogurt because Gene Wilder, his longtime collaborator, wasn't available. It was a pity, he said. He even added, "I hope to work with Wilder again someday," which shows how much he missed that working relationship. This part of the commentary was recorded before Wilder passed away. Improvised scenes and unexpected talents. One of the funniest scenes in Spaceballs was actually made up on the spot. Rick Moranis completely improvised the part where Dark Helmet plays with the Spaceballs action figures. Brooks laughed and said, "It gets a little dirty here." That moment became a fan favorite. Another scene that surprised Brooks was when Princess Vespa is singing in her jail cell. Brooks asked Zuniga if she wanted someone else to do the singing, but she insisted on doing it herself. She pulled it off, and Brooks was glad he let her go for it. Brooks also looked back on his earlier movies during the commentary. He said he only directed his first movie, The Producers, because he didn't want someone else to ruin it. His second film, The 12 Chairs, was one he described as an important, funny little movie. But when he got to Blazing Saddles, he felt like he started to move away from what made him special. "I was deserting my private muse and getting into big stuff, and that may have been my mistake," he admitted. Brooks didn't love making big studio films as much. He said he didn't enjoy the pressure of filling so many seats. He also reflected on a joke in Spaceballs about Kafka's The Metamorphosis. It comes at 1 hour and 4 minutes into the film. Brooks said he was ashamed of that one. "The intellectuals hate me, and the people who've never heard of Kafka don't know what I'm talking about." It was one of those jokes that didn't really land the way he hoped. But that's part of comedy too. Praise from Lucas and a famous chestburster cameo. Brooks made it clear that writing was his favorite part of filmmaking. He said, "Writing is, there is nothing, and then there is something. So it's almost godlike." For him, creating a script from nothing felt more powerful than directing or acting. Once the script is done, everything else follows. He believed that was the real start of any movie. One of the most surprising moments from the commentary was Brooks talking about George Lucas. Lucas actually watched the rough cut of Spaceballs with Brooks. Not only was he not offended, but he laughed along with the whole thing. Lucas and ILM even helped Brooks during post-production. That support from the Star Wars creator meant a lot and showed that the parody was taken in good spirit. Brooks also shared a small memory from his personal life. His first dog was named Pongo, after the Dalmatian in 101 Dalmatians. He said that's why the movie reviewer on the news in Spaceballs was named Pongo too. It was a little tribute. And finally, there's the famous alien scene. In the diner, John Hurt appears in a cameo where a creature bursts out of his chest, just like in the original Alien movie. Brooks said the two had become friends after working together on History of the World, Part 1, and he asked Hurt to recreate the scene. Hurt agreed, and happily did it. That moment became one of the funniest callbacks in the whole movie, and fans still talk about it today. But that unforgettable moment with John Hurt was just one example of how Spaceballs went beyond simple jokes. The movie is packed with hidden gems that reward fans every time they rewatch it. Mel Brooks' universe is full of tiny surprises. Mel Brooks didn't just make Spaceballs funny, he made it detailed. From start to finish, the film hides little gags and clever tricks that even fans who've seen it many times might still miss. One perfect example comes at the 30-minute mark. After Spaceball 1 comes out of ludicrous speed, Dark Helmet tells everyone to take a 5-minute break, then he disappears. What's clever is that Dark Helmet and his crew are not seen again until the 35-minute mark, exactly 5 minutes later. That's the kind of small-time joke that's easy to miss unless you're really paying attention. Another fun secret is Lone Star's outfit. George Lucas allowed Mel Brooks to parody Star Wars, but he had one request. Lone Star could not dress like Han Solo. So, Brooks changed the look. Instead of copying Han, he made Lone Star look more like Indiana Jones, another famous character from Lucas's world. Even George Lucas's own creations found a place in the movie. The Millennium Falcon, the ship from Star Wars, can be seen parked outside the diner in Spaceballs. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's there. Lucas loved the script and even had Industrial Light and Magic help with the production. However, he was very clear on one rule: no Spaceballs merchandise could be sold. That rule itself became a joke in the movie with all the fake products. Even the diner scene showed more examples of this, like Spaceballs branded placemats. Another small trick used in the film is in the land speeder scenes. To make the vehicles look like they were floating, a mirror was placed underneath to reflect the sand. It was a classic movie effect, simple but clever. Jokes in the background, costumes, and cast doubles. Some of the funniest parts of Spaceballs happen in the background or during quick scenes. At one point, the villains think they've caught the main characters, but instead, they capture their stunt doubles. It's a silly gag, but here's what makes it funnier. Lone Star's stunt double in that scene is played by Dane Farwell, who was actually Bill Pullman's real stunt double. Later in the movie, Farwell appears again when Lone Star dodges one of Dark Helmet's attacks. Another visual joke comes from Dark Helmet himself. He's seen drinking from a styrofoam cup during a scene. That wasn't part of the original plan. The crew would leave cups lying around the set, so instead of cleaning them up, Brooks just decided to leave them in and make them part of the world. That little detail ended up being part of the character. There's also a fun joke hidden in the names. One of the characters Mel Brooks plays is named President Scroob. It sounds like a weird space name, but it's actually an anagram of Brooks. It's his own name, just scrambled. There's more detail in the costumes, too. Rick Lazzarini, the Creature FX designer, had multiple jobs on set. He made John Candy's animatronic ears for the Barf costume, but he also played two different characters, Pizza the Hut and one of the apes. That's the kind of behind-the-scenes detail that fans would never guess unless they looked closely. In another moment, Colonel Sanders notices the camera moving toward him and actually steps out of the way. It's one of those funny little fourth-wall breaks that makes Spaceballs feel extra self-aware. Even the diner scene includes quick details that are easy to overlook. When Yogurt shows off his pile of fake Spaceballs merchandise, you can spot Optimus Prime on one of the covers. That's a small nod to Transformers, slipped right into the background. And in another scene, during the video call between Pizza the Hut and his robot sidekick, Vinny, there's a reflection in Vinny's sunglasses. The reflection shows a table with a red and white cloth, a salad, and a drink. That quick detail expands the setting and shows that they really thought about what the pizza parlor would look like, even if it's only seen for a few seconds. Cameos, cultural jokes, and set design that took it further. Spaceballs is full of bold jokes, but it also includes more subtle humor if you know where to look. One background joke that fans caught is the a-hole scene. It's where almost every crew member on Spaceball, one turns out to be an a-hole, literally. But there's one exception. Sergeant Rico gets hit in the groin when the Schwartz backfires, but he stays seated. He's not part of the a-hole group, making him the only one not called that name. It's a small difference, but it's the kind of detail that adds an extra laugh on rewatch. There's also a sneaky language joke that most people miss. During a scene where Dark Helmet talks to a doctor and a nurse who are kissing, he tells the doctor to go back to the golf course and work on your putts. While it sounds like a regular line, the word putts in Hebrew is actually a slang word for a certain male body part. It's a subtle joke that goes over many heads, but fits perfectly with the film's playful tone. The film also plays with references. One of the most famous moments is the diner scene where John Hurt appears. He recreates his alien chestburster scene, but this time, it's done as a parody. This shows how deep Brooks went with his references. Hurt was the same actor from the original film, making the joke even better. Another detail involves the size of Spaceball 1. It wasn't just a small model used for tricks. The actual model built for the ship was 17 feet long, making it one of the biggest prop ships of its time. That's why the ship looked so real on screen, because in many ways, it actually was. These kinds of efforts gave the film a more polished feel, even while the story was filled with chaos and comedy. All of these small details, from the costumes to the jokes to the props, showed just how much care went into Spaceballs. Mel Brooks didn't just make fun of sci-fi, he created a world packed with layers, secrets, and jokes, hiding in every corner. But behind all the laughter, some scenes came with real pain, costs, and unexpected challenges. One of the most shocking facts is about Pizza the Hut. Mel Brooks wanted the costume to look realistic, so the effects team used hot, artificial, melted cheese. It looked perfect on camera, but it was torture for the person inside the suit. The actor, Richard Caron, suffered second- and third-degree burns because the hot cheese kept bubbling and dripping. He finally quit after Brooks demanded more reshoots. Dom DeLuise, who voiced the character, refused to wear the suit from the start. After Caron quit, effects artist Rick Lazzarini had to wear it instead, enduring the heat just to finish the scene. Even with Brooks' reputation for keeping things low budget, Spaceballs ended up being his most expensive movie. It cost around $25 million to make. About $5 million of that went into post-production alone. Brooks handed that work to Lucasfilm, the company behind Star Wars, because he trusted their quality. He respected George Lucas so much that he wanted the final product to look polished. That decision paid off, but it came at a high price. Brooks once joked that it cost him an arm and a leg and another leg. Still, many fans believe that handing the post-production to Lucasfilm helped make Spaceballs look and feel bigger than most comedy spoofs. Mel Brooks also wanted to make sure George Lucas approved of the parody before filming started. Brooks reached out personally to get Lucas's blessing. Lucas not only approved, but also loved the idea. The two shared great respect for each other. In fact, Lucas once told Brooks, "Take out the comedy, and it really works as an adventure." Their friendship made it easier for Spaceballs to exist without any legal trouble, and it showed that even big creators like Lucas could laugh at their own worlds being parodied. No merch, dangerous costumes, and famous cameos. One of the biggest reasons Spaceballs stood out was its no merchandise rule. Brooks and Lucas agreed that Brooks wouldn't sell any Spaceballs products. Lucas was still making millions from Star Wars toys and didn't want any confusion. But Brooks wasn't about to let that stop his sense of humor. He turned it into one of the funniest scenes in the movie. That's where Yogurt, played by Brooks, says the famous line, "Merchandising, merchandising." He shows off fake Spaceballs lunchboxes, cereal, and even Spaceballs the flamethrower. Lucas loved that scene and even complimented Brooks for making fun of something so cleverly. Michael Winslow's cameo as the radar technician was another highlight. His voice talent saved the production team over $1,000 in sound effects. During the scene with Rick Moranis, Winslow makes all the radar noises himself. When he says, "Sir, I've lost the bleeps, the sweeps, and the creeps," and then adds sound effects for each one, it's pure comedy. Then comes the punchline when the radar gets jammed, literally, with raspberry jam dripping down the screen. Winslow's skills made that scene unforgettable. There's also the famous moment outside the diner. If you look closely, you can spot the Millennium Falcon parked outside. It's another small nod to George Lucas. Brooks wanted to include it because of his love for Star Wars. He didn't have the budget to show it flying through space, so he placed it in the parking lot, a small but fun Easter egg for fans. The character Colonel Sanders also came with a surprise. Brooks originally wrote the part for Steve Martin, but Martin turned it down. The role went to George Weiner instead, who delivered it perfectly. John Candy, who played Barf, faced his own challenges. The original plan was for him to wear a full mask, but Brooks didn't want to hide his face. Instead, Candy wore a 30-pound battery pack that powered animatronic ears and a moving tail operated by 3 off-screen technicians. It was tough, but Candy pulled it off with humor and patience. The same can't be said for Mel Brooks' experience as Yogurt. The gold-colored makeup he wore contained latex, which he was allergic to. It caused a rash that spread to his face and eyes. To make things worse, he had to walk on his knees for the role, which hurt even more. Despite all that, Brooks pushed through. Finally, one of the most loved moments came from Rick Moranis. His dark helmet doll scene, where he plays with toy versions of the characters, was fully improvised. It became one of the most iconic parts of the movie, and behind the scenes, even simple technology caused worry. Green screens were new back then, and many cast members were scared they could damage their eyes. Bill Pullman even wore sunglasses between takes to protect himself. It's funny to think about now, but at the time, they all took it seriously. The cult classic returns with a sequel. For years, fans wondered if Spaceballs would ever get a sequel. The original film teased the idea with jokes like Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, but nothing serious came out of it. That changed in 2025. It was finally confirmed that Spaceballs 2 was in the works. The new movie is being directed by Josh Greenbaum and co-written by Josh Gad and Mel Brooks. That mix of fresh talent and original genius has fans excited. The cast will bring together both old and new faces. Lewis Pullman, Keke Palmer, and Josh Gad are joining the story. But the real surprise? The return of the originals. Mel Brooks, Bill Pullman, Rick Moranis, and Daphne Zuniga are all set to reprise their roles. It's a rare thing in Hollywood for a sequel to bring back this many original stars after so many years. The sequel is expected to be released in theaters by MGM in 2027. That gives fans plenty of time to rewatch the original and catch every joke they might have missed. With new characters, new jokes, and a whole new generation of fans, Spaceballs 2 promises to bring back everything people loved, and maybe even a few things they never expected. It's not just a return to the galaxy, it's a return to the kind of comedy that still makes people laugh decades later. Which of these behind-the-scenes facts about Spaceballs surprised you the most? And are you excited to see the original cast return for Spaceballs 2, or do you think the classic should be left untouched? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time!